Hello, hello, hello. Thank you all for taking the time to join us for this AMA session. I'm Mithun, your host for this particular session, and joining me from AMD is Mr. Srinivas M. Reddy, who's the country head for component channel sales and distribution. Hey Srini, are you there? Would you like to share a few words with our viewers?
Hey, hi. Thanks, Mithun. Thanks for the introduction. Hi, all, everybody. It's very exciting here to see you all and kind of join you for this AMD is the newly launched Cezanne parts, codenamed Cezanne, the 5000G series processors deep dive session. I would be happy to kind of address your questions, queries through this session as Mithun takes through the product updates with you all. It's very exciting here. As Mithun introduced, I lead the component channel business for India and happy to be with you all here. Let's look forward for this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Srini. Before we begin the session, I'd like to let you all know that we do have plenty of time to answer your questions throughout the session. We'll be pausing the session every few slides to take your questions rather. And for those of you who signed up via Facebook and our website, we already have questions from you. So we'll be answering some of those, and we'll also be answering some from the live chat in the chat box. And for the folks who are coming up with the most interesting questions, we also have Amazon gift vouchers up for grabs. We have 5 of those, each valued at 2,000 rupees, and we'll be announcing the winners on Monday on this very same video. So if you come to the video on Monday, you can check them in the comment section below us. And with that said, we will begin the session. So the Ryzen 5000 processors were first announced in October last year and saw AMD's latest CPU microarchitecture, which is Zen 3, in action. It brought with itself significant single-threaded as well as multi-threaded performance gains. In fact, all the Ryzen 5000 series processors scored more than 600 points in the Cinebench R20 single-threaded benchmark. And these were the very first processors ever to break the 600-point barrier. Today's session is all about the AMD Ryzen 5000G series APUs, which include the AMD Ryzen 5 5600G and the Ryzen 7 5700G APUs. APUs are simply processors which also include an integrated graphics processor or IGP. And usually when we folks hear about the term APU, we sort of assume that the processor will be meant for entry-level segment, but that's not really the case here, as the two SKUs that we are talking about today, that is the Ryzen 5 5600G and the Ryzen 7 5700G, are meant for the mid-range and high-end segments. To top that, the integrated graphics, which is powered by AMD RADEON graphics, is way more powerful, and you'll see all of those in the coming slides when we share the benchmarks. Now, this also begs the question, who are these new APUs meant for? To start off, you have the very latest Zen 3 microarchitecture powering these processors. This offers enthusiasts the raw processing power to run the latest AAA video games and even content creation applications. The Zen 3 cores are the exact same ones that you find within the other members of the Ryzen 5000 family. And on top of that, you also have a premium IGP, which offers much higher performance in gaming as well as in content creation applications. And when you usually hear about flagship CPU performance, it's natural for one to assume that these might actually have higher power requirements, and that might necessitate a PSU upgrade. Again, that's not the case either, because these new APUs are typically designed with a TDP of 65 watts. So practically every AM4 motherboard, which already has the appropriate VRM design, can easily handle these new APUs. If you have a compatible AM4 motherboard that uses the B450 or higher chipset, all you need is a simple BIOS upgrade, and then you can drop these APUs in and get started. And for folks wondering about the core configuration of the Ryzen 5000G series APUs, we now have all the specifications in front of you. In the mid-range, there's the AMD Ryzen 5 5600G, which is a 6-core APU with multi-threading, which means that the operating system has 12 threads coming from the processor. The base frequency is 3.9 GHz, and with favorable conditions, that can go up to 4.4 GHz. It has a total cache of 19 megabytes, and the IGP is powered by AMD Radeon Vega graphics that has 7 compute units which can go up to 1.9 gigahertz. The 5600G has a SEP of 22,990 rupees along with tax added on top of that. And then we have the high-end APU, which is the AMD Ryzen 7 5700G. That has 8 cores again with multi-threading, so that's a total of 16 threads for the operating system to play around with. And as for the speeds, the 5700G starts off at 3.8 gigahertz and its boost frequency can go up to 4.6 gigahertz. It has 20 megabytes of total cache and the IGP has 8 compute units which can go up to 2 gigahertz should the need arise. The 5700G carries an SEP of 29,990 rupees with tax added on top. And both of these components, like we mentioned previously, are rated for 65 watts TDP. With that, you have a nice overview of the two new processors that we are going to be looking at in today's session. And we'll be now breaking to take a few questions from you guys. Hey Srini, we have a couple of questions from our viewers. The first one is from Kuldeep, who asks, what is so special that makes anyone choose these new processors?
Okay, that's a good question, Mithun. Thanks to Kuldeep. 5000G series processors are the latest APUs which we have launched on the same Zen 3 architecture, which we have the 5000X series processors, which we launched last year around October. So you guys don't need to compromise on the CPU performance. We have the same kind of performance on an APU coupled with the latest Radeon cores in it, which gives you the best gaming experience part of it as a package. So it makes really the best CPU you can find with the best graphic cards ever on a CPU architecture.
And Boro Manthan has asked a simple question, which we've already covered. This is, how many cores does it have and does it support SMT or multi-threading?
Oh yeah, so we have launched two new variants into channel market. One is the six-core part, which is 5600G, and the other one is the 8-core part, which is 5700G. Both does support SMT, and you can be assured of these both range of CPUs which can meet your needs.
The third question is from Vaibhav Vishal, who's asking, is it good for each and every day-to-day tasks?
Okay, so you guys have seen the experience, most of you have experienced the 5000X series processors. Our day-to-day activities are like most easiest workloads for those processors. So with the same architecture here on the APUs, the Cizan platform, you can be rest assured that your daily activities, day-to-day activities can be dealt easily. At the same time, you can have the best of the games played on it, be it AAA or most of the esports gaming games on this both processors.
And the last question is from Divakar Mazumdar, who asks, can we upgrade to a graphics card in the future if we use these processors?
That's the beauty of our architecture today. We give that kind of compatibility and upscaling opportunities for most of you who are investing on us. So yes, definitely you can pair it with a future ready graphic cards if you really need better frame rates and dedicated to maybe AAA kind of gaming. Yes, you can choose our latest 6000 series graphic cards, which definitely suits you, and it can work easily without any hassle.
Thank you for answering all those queries. Now we'll go on with the session. So you heard Srini mention about some of the benchmarks or the performance aspects, and right now we have with you, or rather, right now we have in front of us are those exact benchmarks. So we are looking at the generational performance uplift between the 3000G series APU and the new 5000G series APU. We see a performance improvement to the tune of 2.78 times of what the Ryzen 5 3400G was capable of. And this is in Cinebench R20 because these new APUs now have a lot more cores. The 5700G in particular is an 8-core CPU, so that naturally helps in multi-threading benchmarks. But even if you look at the single-threaded benchmarks such as Cinebench R20 or a more balanced benchmark such as PC Mark 10, you still see an improvement of 1.45x and 1.44x respectively. And as for the integrated graphics, that is integrated AMD Radeon graphics, 3D Mark Time Spy scores see an uplift of 1.13x or 13%. Now, these are all industry standard benchmarks. Let's take a look at some of the gaming benchmarks. Again, we have a couple of popular esports titles such as League of Legends and CSGO, along with a couple of AAA titles such as Metro Exodus, Fortnite, and Civilization 6, to name a few. We can see that the new Ryzen 5000G series APUs give up to 2x the frame rate as seen in League of Legends. And in games such as Fortnite, we can see a frame rate increase of 20 FPS, which is quite a significant bump when you're looking at an IGP. Now, that was the generational uplift between the 5000 series and the 3000 series. Let's take a look at one of the processors in a little more detail. We'll start off with the Ryzen 7 5700G. Like we mentioned previously, this is an 8-core CPU with multi-threading, and the boost clock can go up to 4.6 GHz. Being a high-end processor, the 5700G is not only useful for gaming, but also for content creation applications. And we previously saw a small collection of benchmarks in the generational uplift graph. Now we're going to be seeing the comparison of the new 5700G against some of the competition processors. Now this is in the exact same price class, so you know it's a fair comparison. The 5700G is being compared to a competing processor, and we can see the performance delta ranging from 19 FPS in some games to 50 FPS in other titles. Warframe, which is a popular online co-op game, clocks in at 90 FPS, and CSGO, which is again a popular FPS title, hits 127 frames per second. Pairing this processor with a variable refresh rate monitor could significantly improve your gaming experience, as you're seeing 100 plus frame rates in quite a lot of games. And while you saw gaming benchmarks, we now have more benchmarks pertaining to content creation applications, and you can see they've been bucketed into 3 separate buckets, where there's a performance increment of 23% when compared to competing processors. And if you're looking at productivity applications, then there's a performance delta of 16%, and in general there's a performance improvement of about 31%. And that was the benchmarks for the Ryzen 7 5700G. We can now pause again to take a few more questions. Srini, if you're there, I have a couple of more questions from our viewers. So Shubham Gupta is first. He's asking, how long will it support Windows operating system updates?
Yeah, that's a good question. Not just we are talking about compatibility for future parts, but not just that. We're talking also about the software compatibility. So we are not just Windows 10 ready, but also Windows 11 ready as we speak. And you can easily port onto Windows 11 when it is launched.
Next up is Bimalendu Das, who asks, is it a 7 nanometer processor?
Yes, of course. So both are 56G and 57G. Both are based on the latest 7 nanometer FinFET technology. And yes, I confirm that.
Okay, and the next question is by Harsh Mevada, who asks if he can overclock this particular processor.
Yeah, as you guys have experienced, almost all our Ryzen CPUs are factory unlocked. So you guys can see the same feature being available on our 5000G series processors as well. Yes, both the CPUs are unlocked and you can overclock as well. Up to your taste buds, you can do that.
And this last comment or other question is from the chat box. This one asks, is FSR supported on the 5000G series?
Yeah, FSR FIDELITYFX super resolution is one of such great features we have today in our CPUs. I'll be happy to say that even this feature is enabled on our 5000 GC series CPUs. You just need to enable as and when you play those games. And yes, you got to be updated with your latest drivers, which will take care of it. So FSR is enabled on both these.
All right, with that, we stop our second Q&A session and head back to the presentation. Thank you, Srini. Now we are looking at the Ryzen 5 5600G. It's the mid-range 6-core APU. Again, this thing comes with multi-threading, and the boost clocks can go up to 4.4 gigahertz. The mid-range is the most popular segment for processors, and the introduction of the 5600G does certainly liven things up. Here are a few more benchmarks to show how it performs when compared to the competition. Now you've got a gaming benchmark sheet in front of you. You've got Sid Meier's Civilization 6 scoring 79 frames per second. Then there's Assassin's Creed Odyssey hitting 33 frames per second, and Metro Exodus, which is quite an intensive title, that scores 44 FPS. And if you're looking at popular esports titles, then you also have CSGO and League of Legends in this chart, where you can see you're getting more than 100 FPS. Fortnite even goes all the way up to 184 FPS compared to the competition. The gray bars are exactly what the competition performs at. And you can see that there's a pretty wide gap across most of the titles shown here. Now, like we saw with the 5700G, the new 5600G is also great at content creation applications. On average, there's a performance improvement of 27% in content creation applications. That's a little more delta compared to what we saw with the 5700G. And if you're looking at productivity applications, then there's a performance delta of 16%. And in general, there's a performance improvement of about 30%. Again, this is all when compared with the competition. Now, those were just some of the titles that we saw in the benchmark sheet. And the new Ryzen 5000G series APUs have been shown to score over 100 FPS in a lot more demanding titles such as Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Far Cry 5, The Witcher 3, and a lot more. You have a nice list right in front of you. And if you paid attention to some of the recent announcements made by AMD, and also like Srini mentioned recently while answering one of the questions, you would have heard about FIDELITYFX Super Resolution, a new feature that helps gamers get a lot more frames per second in video games. Now, several titles have already incorporated AMD's FIDELITYFX Super Resolution, or FSR, and this includes titles such as Resident Evil Village, Godfall, The Riftbreaker, Anno 1800, Dota 2, and King's Hunt. There are a lot more titles in front of you, and these were just the games that currently support FSR. There are a lot more studios working on a lot more video games which will support FSR at some point in the future. It might be at launch or it might be in a patch later on. This includes Baldur's Gate, Far Cry 6, Farming Simulator 22, Forspoken, and Vampire Blood Hunt. Now we've seen quite a lot of performance benchmarks along with the introduction of AMD's FSR tech. So we can take another break now and handle a couple of more questions. Hey, Srini.
Hey, Mithun.
Yeah, we've got Ravi Kumar who's asking, what are the MSRP and the available distribution channels? He also has a comment which says the resellers are stocking up and selling at a premium in e-commerce space.
Okay, I think it's a very valid question. Thanks, Ravi. I would love to address your query in detail. If you look at the MSRPs, we have something called ACP, suggested end customer price. These prices are in line to our global price points. We operate the same price points even in India. You can look these prices at any of your neighborhood store across India. The prices still remains in line to our global announced SAPs. What does it make difference on an e-commerce platform is something you guys need to know. E-commerce platforms in India are marketplace wherein the platforms charge their commission for whoever is selling on their platform. So from suggested SEP to the price what you see on any e-tail portals, you definitely will see slightly higher than the SEP or in line to SAP, but the difference is just because the platforms have their own cost to the sellers. I hope I addressed your query.
And we are going to be taking one question from the chat box. This
Yeah.
this asks, can it run games at 1080p settings?
Oh yes. If you look at these processors are well built for that 1080p settings. Any games for that matter with 1080p settings, you can easily play. While you guys have gone through the slides which Mithun was taking through, you have seen the FSR feature is one such feature which can help you guys really boost the performance. And once just that you enable those, you definitely will see 1080p games running very easily for you.
The next question is by Mohan, who asks, what is the difference between this and the last series?
Okay, so it's still valid follow-through question. Definitely, there will be always expectation when you have a successor coming, and you can watch on these CPUs. You will see these CPUs are built on the 7 nanometer FinFET, latest on the latest Zen 3 architecture. You will definitely see the performance boost in the graphics because we have the world-class graphics ever in a CPU integrated on a CPU. So rest assured, this is the best APU you would have ever seen in the market.
Next question is by Mausam Kumar Dave. I'm going to rephrase this a little bit. He asks, how much is the 5000 series good at while playing AAA titles for the new gen era? Basically, he's asking how good is the 5000G series for upcoming AAA games?
They are, as you guys have seen, most of the titles you would have seen through the slides. We have much of the AAA titles which is already compatible with FSR feature in place. Any future, we are already working with a lot of AAA titles. Any future AAA titles with FSR feature enabled, you definitely can feel the difference and run those games at the frame rates you expect to run without any stutter-free kind of an experience.
Thank you, Srini. I guess it's time for us to head back into the slides for one last session.
Sure.
So, because you have AMD's Radeon graphics powering the IGP within these new APUs, you also get the benefit of the Radeon software that has been built over generations of development. Now you get first-class driver features for gaming. This includes AMD's FSR, as we've just talked about, and that also includes Radeon Boost, which is again another technology that helps you get a slightly better experience. Then there's Radeon Anti-Lag, image sharpening, Radeon Chill, and a lot more features, as you can see in the slide in front of you. All of these contribute to a much better gaming experience for the end user. And the first one, that is AMD FIDELITYFX Super Resolution, is something we'll be going to a little more detail. Now you get an average performance improvement of about 2.4x in certain titles. Now FSR has 4 different profiles. You have balanced, you have performance, you have ultra, and you can vary the performance across all of these different profiles depending upon what you have running. Now, if a particular game gives you, let's say, less than 100 FPS in ultra quality, you can switch it down to performance or balance and then get more frames. Now, higher frame rates also means lower latency and more responsive gaming. Plus, you also get the advantage of pairing high refresh rate monitors with variable refresh rate with these processors to get a more fluid experience. Now, IGP that is present in the processor again is powered by AMD Radeon, and whatever tech you have in your graphics cards that is part of the AMD GPU Open platform is also available on these APUs as well as the notebooks. Now, you've seen how FSR actually improves performance as well as gaming experience. Let's take a look at some benchmark figures to see how big of an improvement you can experience. Now in front of you, you have AMD Ryzen 7 5700G with FSR turned on, and all of these titles that you see in front of you were benchmarked at 1080p resolution at varying graphics settings. The white bars represent AMD's Ryzen 7 5700G with FSR turned off, and the orange bars represent the same processor with FSR turned on. You can see how Anno 1800 nearly doubles its performance, and you can see a similar performance improvement in the King's Hunt low profile. Same thing again in Riftbreaker Ultra, and the story continues across the entire graph. The delta is around 20 FPS or more across all these titles. So there's a significant performance bump that you're getting just by turning on a software feature, which is again free. Now, if you are aiming at the 5700G or the 5600G, there's an added benefit. You can get these processors now because let's say if you're holding out on buying a new PC simply because graphics cards are supremely expensive, then this is a nice way of getting a system together because you don't have to bother about a graphics card at the moment of purchase. In fact, you can go and get AMD RX 6000 series later on and add it to your system and it will work just fine. Now, in order to build a system for the Ryzen 5000G series processors, all you need are AMD AM4 socketed motherboards built using the AMD 400 and 500 series chipsets. This includes the B450, X470, A520, B550, and X570. All you need is to check the motherboard support page to see if they have a BIOS upgrade with Giza 1.2.0.3b or newer. Take that BIOS, flash it onto your motherboard, swap the processors, and you're good to go. And now we are ending, or rather nearing the end of our presentation. We've seen how these new processors include AMD's latest Zen 3 microarchitecture, and it's paired with their Radeon graphics. Again, premium IGP coupled with premium microarchitecture to give you really good gaming performance as well as content creation performance. And because these new processors are now in the mid-range as well as in the high-end segments, you have an APU in every single segment that you want. So if you're looking at the entry level, you have the previous 3000 series G processors. In the mid-range, you have the 5600G, and in the high-end segment, you have the 5700G. And because it's AMD's own tech powering the IGP, you also have the benefit of AMD's Radeon software to go with the IGP. And with that, we are going to conclude the slides, but we still have time for one more session of Q&A. So if Srini, you're there, I will switch to our last set of questions.
Yes, Mithun.
The first one is from Rahul Malviya, who asks, is it good for content creation applications such as Adobe Premiere Pro, After Effects, Photoshop, and Cinema 4D?
Yes, so these processes are really good when it comes to content creation as well. As you have gone through the slides, certain benchmarks we showed up to 20% against a competition. We show uplift when it comes to content creation applications, be it Adobe Photoshop kind of applications or any other related ones. So we do see upliftment compared to competition as well.
And the next question is something we've already answered, but we can obviously take it again. Arpit Goyal asks, what are the compatible motherboards?
Yeah, perfect. I think that's very important, you guys, to know the compatibility of motherboard chipsets. One thing we have made sure is that we give that compatibility on the existing set of chipsets, starting from the 400 series as well as to the 500 series. So you can pair it with a B450 with updated BIOS and go up to X570. We are compatible across the range of the chipsets.
And the last question from our previously registered bank is by Apritam Kumar Singh, who asks, how well does the 5000G series desktop processors tackle heat while maintaining high performance?
Yeah, I think that's one of a legacy question. If you guys ask about AMD platform, the heat is one of the doubt anybody would have, maybe even today. But you guys see these 5000G series CPUs are based on the latest 7 nanometer architecture, which consumes a maximum TDP of 65 watt. And while you can have your all the workloads at ease of this power consumption, maximum up to 65 watt. So rest assured, these are the best power efficient CPUs you could get in the market.
And then there's one question from the comment section. This is by Sai Karthik Prashant, who's again asking a question along the same lines. Does it come with a stock cooler, or should we go for an AIO cooler? Which one is good?
Yeah, so both the CPUs come with stock red steel coolers. So these are really good for your day-to-day activities, a bit casual gaming, as well as your day in, day out activities. These coolers are really good enough. You can be settled with these coolers, but someone is really an enthusiast who want to upgrade a higher end graphic card and push the load up to 8 cores completely, then maybe a recommended custom cooler from any of our partners in the market is still recommended.
All right, with that, we have finished up all the questions. There are a lot more coming in the chat. I don't believe we have time to answer those at the moment, but we'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out and joining us for this session on the AMD Ryzen 5000G series APUs. And a special shout out to our guest, Srinivas M. Reddy, Country Manager of AMD for channel sales and distribution. Sorry. Thank you again, Srini. It was a wonderful time hosting you for the session.
Thanks, Mithun, and thanks one and all who joined this session. It was really good, great questions. I hope you guys are satisfied. If not, we have our team spread across the regions. You can reach out to us. We are there to address your queries. Thanks for joining. Thank you once again. Thanks, Mithun.
Thank you all. Bye.